we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm, and I'm cold.
I'm
cold.
Ann Northrop, and it's 2015. Happy New Year.
But it's not cold in Florida, in the Sunshine State, where same-sex marriages got underway this week.
Though a few counties have found a way to show how much they still hate us.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush commented on the developments in Florida and sparked some, I was outraged.
I would say we felt contempt for him, but we'll discuss that. This is a big week in the courts for the right to marriage equality.
The suicide of a transgender girl has sparked a nationwide debate about what should be done to prevent these tragedies.
A gay couple in Denver has found a unique way to respond to homophobia.
We'll remember former New York Governor Mario Cuomo's legacy on gay and AIDS issues.
In a first, a transgender woman was elected a mayor of a town in India.
The movie Pride is marketed in the United States with a closeted campaign,
which we will discuss with our very special guest and favorite returnee, Michael Musto, and a host of other show business issues. Michael is the legendary La Dolce Musto columnist for The Village Voice, now writing Musto the Musical column for Out.com.
And winner of the Gay USA Columnist of the Year Award.
Gay USA Columnist of the Year?
We just did that because we heard you haven't gotten a GLAAD award, and that's ridiculous.
Not even a nomination.
Michael,
I'll take it.
Michael, I've been reading you for so long, and you were one of the great commentators. You should have won the Pulitzer Prize by now, and that's no joke.
Thank you.
You're a good,
Thanks
good
to both
writer.
Of you. Good night. Take care. Oh, we're going to talk too?
Oh, sure.
Well, the ostensible reason we brought you in here is because we're having a gay holiday on January 17th for Whitney, the Lifetime movie. You interviewed the woman who plays her girlfriend, Robin Crawford.
Her alleged girlfriend.
Well, I'm going to go beyond that. But
that sounds criminal, doesn't it? Alleged girlfriend.
It does. But tell us what you think. You've seen the movie.
I've seen the movie.
The actress.
Of course, a Lifetime movie is not going to be the normal heart. This is actually pretty bad. But they do kind of make some half-assed, let's say, steps towards saying that Whitney was a lesbian. They don't come out and say so. But Robin, first of all, wears a mannish suit.
Well, there you go.
There you go. She has a butch hairdo. She looks kind of like you, Ann.
Whoa!
She's very attractive.
But the title is Love is a Triangle.
Yes, it's a triangle because it takes place when Whitney meets Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
And she's already deeply entrenched with Robin. She's hugging her, kissing her, giving her gifts. Along comes Bobby, and that ruffles Robin's feathers. And I meant that, Ann. She's very good looking, and so are you. Oh gosh.
I forgive you. It's okay.
I forgive you. Newsflash, you're a butch lesbian, and I'm an effeminate homosexual.
I'm a tomboy.
Okay.
Androgynous.
We should have all been in the Whitney movie.
And I say we're all transgender, and I say that without irony, because we're all on a spectrum.
Let's not take away from real transgender people, their transgender sexuality.
Don't you miss
I
being
think we're
Bobby
all on
Brown?
a spectrum.
Okay.
Don't you miss being Bobby Brown?
Oh, well, the toilet paper episode was one of the finest, really, episodes on television.
I thought Whitney was pretty amusing in that reality
But the
series.
actress who played Robin, his name, Yolanda Ross, and she's very good.
Yeah.
And she said, well, we went as far as we could go. It's really in the subtext. It's in the performance. And you'll see that if you waste your time watching this movie.
Well, I think that is a step forward, given how many years we've seen people closeted all over the place in these movies. The fact that they could even, portray it in some way, I think, is an indication of the time we're in.
I think it's pretty clear. And when Whitney does catch up or get caught up in Bobby's life, Robin is clearly hurt. She feels betrayed in a way. Mm-hmm. And then when Bobby becomes a little too messy, spoiler alert, in case you are going to watch this, Robin then says, I'll go after him. And she's angling for a showdown. She's going to get him.
Now, the other thing you wrote about in the current column is Foxcatcher, which is the Steve Carell movie that's out now that's about the DuPont heir and his fascination or obsession with the wrestlers, and was that homoerotic? Was it actually sexual? And that's sort of covered up a little in the movie, evidently.
It's hinted at in the movie, and I thought they didn't go far enough in showing how that character, DuPont, how his closeted gayness may have contributed to his psychomania. However, Mark Schultz, the real-life wrestler played by Channing Tatum in the movie, was appalled that the movie even hinted at any kind of goings-on between him and the Steve Carell character. And he put out a series of bitter, vitriolic tweets saying this movie sucks, even though he had previously promoted it. And any implication that I did it with that guy is sick and insulting.
But
Well, you know,
So
even,
he'll probably get a GLAAD award.
Even Charlton Heston always insisted, since he played Michelangelo, that Buonarroti was not homosexual. I know this, you know.
But he had a
was
gun.
He was a man of the 16th century, whatever the hell back we are.
Well, I thought the movie would have benefited, because I'm the only one on earth who thought it was boring and portentous and pompous and slow and glacial. It would have benefited from a little more sex of any kind.
So what's going on in Hollywood in general? We're going to talk about the movie Pride, which is an indie film, which has a problem. But what's that they still have this, you know, block about dealing realistically, honestly with gay stuff.
They're always terrified. And let's talk about Pride, the DVD of this charming film, which is about a real-life incident where LGBT people came together to back the striking miners in Margaret Thatcher's England.
1984.
And they kind of warily circled each other, these two subgroups, before realizing we're brothers and sisters under the skin.
Right.
And they changed history in a way.
We have that picture up there so we can show what happened? Yeah.
The DVD, first I read, oh, gayness taken away from the DVD. I thought they edited the whole movie and made the character straight, but that's not the case. It's just the front
There's
cover.
the picture, see? No.
The front cover used to say gay activists, and now it just says activists. And then the back cover used to have like a rainbow kind of motif, and that's gone.
And there's a banner on the left-hand original version that says lesbians and gays
support the miners.
And that has been erased from the new version. And that yellow banner across the boxes where
On the right side.
is where they've deleted gay and lesbian activists and made it just London-based activists.
What is the point in 2015 of doing this? My experience is that gay themes draw people in and make people change the channel and want to see what the show is. That's why we call this show Gay USA and not anything else, so that people will, you know, seriously. But
well, just USA would be kind of But I don't know, this is a long-running tradition in movies that if there's a gay story, they'll market it as a human story. How many times have we been told, this isn't a gay story, it's a human story? In other words, we don't want to scare people away. The reality is, if it's a good movie, people are going to want to see it. Yeah. Pride is a good movie, but it was a very obscure little footnote in history. So people didn't flock to it. But I think just saying activists and minors instead of gay activists and minors doesn't make it any more marketable. Right. And it's just disgraceful. Are we going to say Selma is not an African-American film? It's just people. Talk about sickening and insulting.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly there are a lot of gay people in Hollywood, and yet this continues. And the world is marching forward to some extent. We talk every week about our, you know, advances and defeats, but it seems so crazy and stupid.
Well, as we've learned, some of the biggest homophobes are gay people.
Exactly.
But also what I found amusing about the whole thing is when this story broke, the company that put out the DVD said, we don't know how this happened, and we're going to investigate to find out who did this. Like magically, the word gay just lifted itself off the DVD.
Well, a couple of things about that. First of all, the company that did that was Sony.
Which is having a great year.
And CBS Films along with it. And then the director of the movie was asked about that, and he put out a statement saying, oh, I'm fine with it because it'll increase the viewership of the movie.
Misguided whore.
Yeah.
And Sony was behind, is Sony behind Foxcatcher too? Because I think they're the ones who pressured the real life wrestler to delete his tweets. Well, why don't we talk about the interview as long as we're talking about Sony?
Yes, which we talked about last week because there's a clip we could not show because it's so profane of Eminem being interviewed and very straight-facedly doing this whole bit about, well, don't you realize the reason my lyrics are homophobic is because I'm gay. I've been leaving gay breadcrumbs
right, I'm
for
trying
years.
to confront and grapple with this.
Yeah.
I didn't find it funny. I thought it was deeply disgusting because this is a man who has ritualistically bashed gay people with his lyrics for years, and now this all turns into a cute joke with Mr. Gay-friendly, very gay-friendly James Franco going along with it. It was probably his idea. It left a very bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was horrifying, and that's pretty much the beginning of the movie, and it goes downhill from there.
No.
You've seen it. Well, and speaking of getting rid of gay images, that's also something that is brought up in The Imitation Game. Now, this is about Alan Turing, who broke the Nazi code and won the war and all that kind of stuff. I like the movie a lot. It certainly interwove his arrest for being gay or for engaging in homosexual activity, his childhood love, that kind of stuff. It didn't have an adult relationship with a man in it, but I thought it was a very powerful film. But there are a lot of people challenging it on historical grounds, and they wanted to see him kissing a man.
I totally get that, but I'm never the one kind of screaming that we need to see actual blowjobs or anything. I don't know. Remember way back, Philadelphia, the movie, there were complaints that it wasn't sexual enough, and I thought, well, maybe the characters aren't that sexual at that point.
But it is 20 years later or whatever after
Right.
Philadelphia, and I was disappointed in The Imitation Game, which I thought was a very superficial telling of the story and not explicit enough about his.
I would have liked more about the actual gay sexuality, because in any movie, the characters' sexualities are explored. Yeah. However, what sex life was Alan Turing really having? Could he have had an open boyfriend? No. As we know, it was punishable to be homosexual at that point in England, and in fact was punished. I'd actually like to see a movie about a gay hero who is not punished. I like The Imitation Game a lot, but I'd like to see one about someone who does something great, like solves the end of a war, and doesn't have to be chemically castrated.
He was
Bayard Rustin in Selma, who is there as a hero but not gay, right?
And I asked Ava DuVernay, who did a brilliant job of directing, about that, and she said, well, we didn't go into anybody's sexual life in the movie. And I said,
Not
well,
Martin Luther King?
King's wife is a major character.
They did use Coleman Domingo, an out gay actor, as Ralph Abernathy. And my understanding is that there were some tapes about King, and I'm not trying to scandalize anybody here, but there was some tapes about King and Abernathy mixing it up a little bit too, on the road, et cetera. Of course, they didn't get into that. But they did allow an out gay actor to play Ralph Abernathy.
Well, Ruben Santiago Hudson, who's a Tony-winning actor, plays Bayard Rustin.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my column on Out.com that this would be a great movie, because Ava told me, well, he deserves his own movie. There are so many characters in this film that deserve their own film. And I said, Patrick Ian Polk, who is an African-American gay director, would be great to do this. And when Patrick read that, he said, I'm on it.
Yes.
So we're going to see.
Or Lee Daniels.
Bayard
Did you see The Butler?
Yes, I like The Butler.
Excuse me, Bayard Rustin does have his own movie. It's a documentary called Brother Outsider.
Yeah.
But he deserves a feature film.
Yes, he does.
With a big name
Well,
actor.
one of the things we learned from Lee Grant when she was on the show.
Love her.
Well, not learned, but in reading about her, and she talked about this. She would make documentaries about these serious subjects, and then she'd turn it into a movie of the week to make a lot of money and to get it seen by 15 times as many people. So that's what needs to be done.
We're having a train wreck this Sunday. We have the Golden Globes, TLC's My Husband's Not Gay, the Mormon.
And I'm the Queen of England.
Yes. And Looking returns to HBO.
That's a no-brainer. I'm watching the Golden Globes. That's the real gay Olympics until the actual gay Olympics of the Oscars. The Mormon show, I thought they were against gay marriage.
Yes, and but they're not against gays marrying a member of the opposite sex, which is what the
But the
show's
subtitle
about.
is My Husband's Not Gay, but he takes it up the ass.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Well, I'll still be watching the Golden Globes.
So what are the storylines to look for at the Golden Globes?
Well, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are hosting, and they're amusing. They're good. They should just stick with them through eternity.
Yes,
They have the right tone.
I liked Ricky Gervais as the
You
host.
did?
Yes.
I didn't mind the sourness. I mean, and I love when they acted all upset. Oh, he was so bitter. It's like they knew what he was going to say.
Exactly.
I just don't like his smug delivery.
He can get a little smug.
But I guess Boyhood will probably win everything. It was, I would say, the best movie
Michael
of the year.
Musto has predicted that on goldderby.com.
Yes.
And his pride.
It's smear time, because now LBJs aide is saying, well, Selma doesn't portray LBJ as the hero that he actually was.
Well, not hero, but I mean, it does,
That he was more...
Tom Wilkinson's portrayal of Johnson makes him look like the total villain in the piece, and they do have tape that says he was working with King to try to, get them together to do the Selma March, and that'll get people excited, and I'll be able to do the bill. So, I mean, and he did.
Then we have the Foxcatcher thing, and then we have Imitation Game. There was an article about the Russian spy plot line and how that smears Alan Turing and how that never happened. Right. See the movie, you'll see what I mean.
But that seems to be headed for some awards, doesn't it?
I actually think it's going to come up empty. I think it's going to be Boyhood, Michael Keaton, Julianne Moore, Patricia Arquette.
Have you seen the Julianne Moore movie, Still Alice?
Yes, and she's very good. She's always good.
Yes, she's wonderful.
But the great thing about an early Alzheimer's movie is that you get your disease of the week, but she's also a knockout. This isn't like, Judi Dench or Julie Christie with Alzheimer's. This is a beautiful woman forgetting everything.
Fantastic.
And that's why people
right
like
back to the 40s.
Now you come on.
Yeah, back to Susan Hayward.
You're calling Golden Globes and the Oscars the Gay Olympics, and God knows I threw an Oscar party for many years thinking that it was, although I don't do it anymore. But aren't we really awarded out? I mean, I'm a SAG-AFTRA voter. We're going to have the SAG-AFTRA Awards soon also.
This is a problem now that by the time the Oscars come around, which are going to be February 22nd, they're an anticlimax because there have been so many awards. They're all televised. The SAG, the Golden Globe.
The BAFTAs in Britain.
The freaking BAFTA. The broadcast critics are getting televised. So you know exactly who's going to win. It's so easy to win the Oscar pool these days if you're plugged in because you know who's going to get every category.
Last year we knew who's going to win, best short, live action and documentary. That could be a tough.
They should just get rid of those.
That could be it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And who's hosting this year?
Neil Patrick Harris. So they went again with a gay. Last year was Ellen.
Yeah.
So, it's good that we have gays every year hosting everything.
But somehow it doesn't, I watch them for the entertainment. I don't care about the horse race so much.
Everyone does. Nobody cares if Boyhood is going to beat Birdman, but you watch for who's wearing what, who's wearing whom.
What the jokes are.
Which four people look upset for every category.
Yeah.
And I miss the appalling old days of like Debbie Allen doing an interpretive dance to Saving Private Ryan. Or, Rob Lowe, fresh off his teen sex video, singing Proud Mary with Snow White.
Yes!
Those were the good old days.
Yes, exactly. Or Shaft.
Everything's too tasteful now.
With the big
or Debbie Boone singing
tie.
with deaf children signing, and it turned out they weren't really deaf. Just like Sasheen Littlefeather was only half Native American.
For those who don't remember this, that's the woman who picked up the Oscar that apparently Marlon Brando didn't want. Not Marlon Brando.
Yes,
Marlon Brando for The Godfather.
For The Godfather, yes.
But to me, the real entertainment these days is Fashion Police. And with Joan Rivers gone and Kathy Griffin starting on Monday.
Well, when Joan died, I said, obviously it's going to be Kathy Griffin. She's the inheritor to the throne of Joan. She loved Joan. Joan approved of her.
Right.
She comes from the same caustic, cutting school of comedy.
But can we, and I've always, watched Kathy Griffin and enjoyed a lot of what she does, but I don't feel the same kind of affection that I felt
give her
in
a
the
chance.
end.
Joan had a lot of years to win our hearts,
And it took a lot of years.
Yeah, she had her ups and downs.
Yeah, she did.
And Kathy does the New Year's show with Anderson Cooper on CNN, which is enjoyable because she's bragging on everything and he's giggling, and it's a cute chemistry. It's like you two.
Yeah. Well, we used to be called the Regis and Kathy Lee of gay TV. Anderson.
Oh, I wouldn't take that.
Well, it was years ago. Years ago. All right, well.
But you don't drink on your show like Kathy Lee.
No. No, we don't. Maybe we should start.
What's in these cups?
I'm just on cough medicine today.
Oh,
and antihistamines.
Have any more?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael. Tell us about any future predictions and stuff coming up.
I will. Enjoy the Globes on Sunday. Don't watch My Husband Was a Gay show.
You can read Michael on
DVR.
out.com and on goldderby.com to read his predictions for all these award shows.
Musto the Musical, and many books published that you can get to. And
Google
now
me.
appearing frequently on CNN.
Yes, and I write articles for Stars of the Times and paper.com, so
Right, the Times.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michael.
Bye. Bye. Michael's
Enjoy
going
the
away.
weekend.
We're
Okay.
sliding in here. Are we
Now
okay?
back to the
Can you follow
news.
us?
The news stuff.
Right. Big news for those of you who have been waiting.
Well, Michael brought the sunshine to our life,
Yes.
but now we must turn to the sunshine in Florida, where marriages started this week, finally. We were maneuvering in the courts, and what Judge Hinkle finally said at the end of last week was...
Tell them who Judge Hinkle is.
Well, he was a federal judge who said that the anti-same-sex marriage law was unconstitutional in a panhandle county, Washington County, that's very conservative, and in the case of one couple. But so then the debate became, well, does it apply just to that county? Does it apply just to that couple? And he finally considered arguments from all sides and said, no, look, I can't expand my decision, but if you think you're going to get away with denying gay couples marriage, you are going to be violating the Constitution, and you're going to be sued, and you're going to be in trouble. This was a very clever move on his part, because the thinking was that the Florida Attorney General was kind of baiting him into expanding his decision so she could appeal that and stop the marriages.
Yes, the thrice married Pam Bondi, Attorney General of Florida, was fighting this tooth and nail.
Yes, but she tried to sucker him into a decision that would give her further opportunities to, in fact, delay the marriages. But he said, basically, I'm not going to be suckered into expanding the decision. The decision stands the way it was. I'm just warning you that the reality here is that you're not going to get away with not doing this.
And then it's in Miami, I guess, we have Judge Zabel, right?
Yes.
Who lifted her stay of her decision on Monday.
Yeah.
And
So,
we have a picture of the happy
24.
couples, if we can pull that up, the happy couples, Rich, celebrating after she lifted her stay, so that it's, you know, again, it's signaled you're not going to win anywhere. Everybody, if you can pull up, no, that's the couple. That's the couple in the Panhandle. This is the couple. These are the couples in Miami, and put up the picture of the other couple, because that's Steve and Ozzy. This is the couple in this little town of 2,000 people. That takes guts, folks. Folks.
Apologies for Mr. Humm.
I have had nothing to drink. That takes real guts to stand up in your little town and say you're going to sue for the right to marry. The whole county only has 24,000 people.
This show's going to get a reputation for focusing on gay cowboys.
I know, because we did it last week with those
Australians.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, there are about a dozen counties in Florida who are not happy about this, but they're willing to go along with the law. They will issue marriage licenses.
They have to go along with the law.
Yes,
They have
and
to
they
issue the
are.
licenses.
Well, they're not doing civil disobedience or anything.
Right.
They're going ahead, but they have come up with a new plan. They are no longer performing marriages in their courthouses or their, municipal
This
buildings.
is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to start opening up little places outside these courthouses to do the marriages. Because what they did was they all sat together, and no one was comfortable with doing a same-sex marriage. That's basically what they decided. No one in the entire courthouse.
No one?
No, that's what they said.
No one who spoke up,
There
at
was
least.
no one had the guts to do it. So they said, we will not do them for straight couples. We will not do them for gay couples. Then we're not against the law, and they'll probably get away with this, I would think.
Well,
Because they're
as
not
long as-
obligated to provide that service.
No,
They're
and
obligated to issue the licenses.
They're treating everyone the same. They're not doing straight couples marriages either.
Let me explain marriage to you. You do get a license. You're not married when you get a license. The license is then taken to somebody who is authorized to marry you. Could be a preacher, could be a justice of the peace, could be somebody at the courthouse. They sign it, you're married. That's how it works. So now in these counties, people are either having to go to other counties who are welcoming them and their business, or they're, a law office is opening itself up and saying, we'll do the marriages there
Or-
for the same fee
or
that you
a-
would have paid at the courthouse.
A pastor can do it.
Yes.
They are licensed to perform marriages, so they can do it, and some are. Excuse
Yes.
me.
Well, there is some resistance to this. The Archbishop of Miami, Thomas Wensky, we got a picture of him there on the motorcycle. That's him on the left there on the motorcycle. He's quite a guy. He's a biker. He put up a letter that said employees of the archdiocese can be fired if they post about, quote unquote, prohibitive behaviors. Prohibitive? Is that like an expensive wedding or something? No, I don't. I think he meant to say prohibited behaviors like
autocorrect,
gay love. Then there's but on the other hand, there's the Archbishop of St. Petersburg, Catholic, Robert Lynch, who wrote that we reject notions which might suggest that same-sex couples are a threat, incapable of sharing relationships marked by love and holiness. I think he wants to be in the Pope's favor, who is a little softer on these, even though we don't like him.
I don't know that the Pope is looking for these archbishops to approve same-sex marriage.
I think he's full of it because he has not changed the church teaching on homosexuality or any of these issues. But he fired the cardinal, who was a real hardliner about this. He did do that. And he's appointed a whole new set of people who are going to be softer in tone. Again, we want more than softer in tone.
Well, not all the new cardinals are softer in tone. The guy from Uruguay is very anti-homosexuality and
they're all anti-homosexuality.
Yeah. Anyway, and then the politicians. Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida, now rushing full speed ahead to run for president in 2016. First, when asked about this, said, well, I think it should be a state decision, and Florida has voted, and blah, blah, blah.
And he said, it's been overturned by the courts, I guess. That's what he said. He was coming off the golf course?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably.
And you know how we are when we come off the course. We're thinking about the round.
Yeah. But then, 24 hours later, his staff came up with a better comment, or what he thought was a better comment. We must respect the gay couples who want to, to sanctify their marriages, their relationships.
But we must also respect those of us who believe marriage is a sacrament and want to safeguard religious liberty. And that, folks, is going to be the watchword for these Republicans and right-wingers from now on. It's happening in other states. I believe that Virginia is looking at a religious liberty bill now.
Yes, a lot of states are. And we don't, Jeb didn't go so far as to say that he was looking for legislation.
Oh, believe me.
Maybe so. But he hasn't said that yet. But none of it was really open and supportive of same-sex couples or marriage, and it was greeted with a lot of derision and contempt when he said that, and people called him out on it very quickly. Right. I was proud of people for jumping on him for that.
But we have made a lot of progress, so let's give you a slight update now as to the kind of progress that we've made. Folks, in 70% of the United States of America now, you can go get same-sex married. But there are 14 states where you can get married, but you can be fired for getting married. That means, in other words, if you're known as gay, there's no protection for you under the civil rights laws, although in some cities there are. But the states are Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Montana, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming, the equality state.
Where there are no non-discrimination protections.
Right.
But, sometimes companies do it on their own. For instance, the Publix supermarkets in Florida, which is a very major institution in Florida, announced before the marriages began that they would offer, spousal insurance to all legal same-sex spouses. And that was a great decision on their part. Right.
Now, then there's what's happening in the courts right after we do this show. I mean, the end of this week on January 9th. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court of the United States is going to meet, and they are going to have a conference on a bunch of the cases that are up now, especially the Sixth Circuit, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Michigan. And they're also considering whether to take an appeal on the Louisiana case, which has not gone through the circuit appeals court.
Well, frankly, neither has Florida. That case is supposedly under review at the 11th Circuit, and And the 11th Circuit hasn't gotten to considering it yet, and yet we've gone through enough other kinds of stages that same-sex marriage is now legal in Florida, and no one expects it to disappear, and everyone's wondering whether the Florida Attorney General is going to continue to fight to have the 11th Circuit overturn that.
Well, the Fifth Circuit is also hearing a case on Friday.
Friday, the Fifth Circuit hears Mississippi, Texas, and the Louisiana case, which our side is arguing in the Fifth Circuit Court, but is also asking the Supreme Court to hear before the Fifth Circuit decides. And meanwhile, Idaho, where it's a settled issue, is still asking the Supreme Court to hear their arguments that it should be overturned.
Because Governor Butch Otter, for that is his name, and the Attorney General there filed an appeal to the Supreme Court saying that their case has national consequences. So you really ought to take a look at it. But this is in the Ninth Circuit.
Well, here's what you should be looking for. As early as Monday, 9, 10, 11, 12th, the 12th, as you were in your haze after the Golden Globes and My Husband's Not Gay and looking, and you're preparing for Fashion Police.
And Girls.
I don't watch that. You can look for an announcement by the Supreme Court about whether they are taking the cases from the Sixth Circuit, any or all of them, Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky, and whether they will take the Louisiana case.
But they don't have to make an announcement next week.
They do not.
They can wait on it. But it seems like they're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Now, there's a case in what state am I in now?
Nebraska?
No. What's the inmate case?
Nebraska.
Yes. The ACLU does not want the inmate and the transgender fiance to join their suit.
It would involve too much delay, too many complications. We've got our case already on the way.
But all this could be solved if the Congress passes the Respect Marriage Act, which has been reintroduced into the Congress. It only has 79 co-sponsors. I saw people like, in New York, from Charlie Rangel and Nydia Velasquez aren't on the bill. Get everybody on the well. Not my Congress people. You call them. You call your congressperson, get them on this bill. They've got 42 co-sponsors in the Senate, which is pretty good.
Good.
That's good. That's
that's
almost a majority.
This is to basically legalize.
Repeal DOMA.
Yes, it's to repeal all of DOMA and to say that the federal government must provide benefits equally to same-sex married couples, no matter where you live if you are legally married. So no more of this business of the Social Security Administration saying, well, yes, you're legally married, but you live in a state that doesn't recognize it, so we're not going to recognize it either for these benefits.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so the idea is to clear all that up.
Obama should fix that. He's given us diplomatic relations with Cuba. Can't he do that?
Well, they claim that there are laws or regulations that forbid it, but I agree there should be a way to
Yeah, we have a law that's an embargo against Cuba, too.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have an ambassador, but we can't send him or her there.
Congratulations to Catherine Patrick, daughter of Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. She came out.
We've got a picture of her here.
Yeah, she came out a few years ago. She's on the left there. This is her with her fiancé, Alicia Marie Lemieux. They live in San Francisco. That's their dog, Cora, and they are getting married. And Governor Deval Patrick, who will be out of office shortly, his term ends, is very, very ecstatically happy for them. And
in Texas, Freedom to Marry has come out with a sort of a different kind of an ad to promote the freedom to marry using peace officers.
Police officers, yes. This is an ad that's running on television in Texas, produced by Freedom to Marry. And let's take a look at
I became a police officer in 2006.
Chris makes a sacrifice every day along with the rest of us.
He puts his life on the line just like I do.
My partner, Justin, and I, we live together. Eventually, one day, we'd like to get married just like everybody else.
A lot of people think gay people shouldn't be able to get married.
That makes no sense.
Freedom is a big deal. The freedom to marry, the freedom to say what you want to say, and the freedom to do what you want to do.
Texans believe in freedom and liberty, and part of that is to be able to marry who you love, so Chris should be able to marry whoever he loves.
And there it is. Hello.
So
That's-
you know, the Texas cases are going to the Fifth Circuit this Friday for argument, and they're trying to lay the groundwork for making people understand this when it is declared legal in Texas to try to, you know, mollify the backlash.
But again, to reiterate, folks, this does not end our work by any means because we don't have civil rights protections in a lot of these states, and we don't have civil rights protections in this country. And we desperately need them, especially because you are going to want to get married if you're in a partnership oftentimes, and there may be certain risks associated with that, and there shouldn't be.
Right. All right. On to other news.
Well,
Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the video from Denver. This was over the holidays. A couple had something on their door that was defaced, and they had a very unique way of dealing with it. So why don't we just show you the videotape? If
Local
we can
news
roll
report
that.
from Denver.
It's still hard to picture why someone would do it.
It was actually carved into the door with a knife or a key.
A gay slur scratched into the paint, a hate message delivered just in time for the holidays.
I felt kind of a mix of sadness and anger. I mean, I was so mad, I was shaking.
Sean White says he left his Denver apartment for about an hour last Sunday and returned to find an offensive word on the front door.
And it was just kind of shocking.
White and his partner couldn't help but wonder about the message the person who wrote it was trying to send.
Someone's goal probably with scrawling that into our door was to make us feel ashamed.
But rather than shame, White felt empowered and put up a message of his own. To the individual who scrawled the word into our door, we regret to inform you that you completely failed to use glitter paint and or sequins. Your work looked rushed and your handwriting was positively atrocious. It is for these reasons that we have removed your work from our door with sandpaper. Fabulously yours, The Gays in apartment 611. Then he posted both images on his Facebook page, and it exploded, shared hundreds of times and viewed by millions across the world.
This is so far beyond anything we thought was going to happen.
For this couple, it was the best possible vindication.
This apartment building is monitored by video surveillance, but there are no cameras in the hallways, so the couple may never know who actually did it. They suspect it could have been a neighbor, but they hope not.
We took the high road.
Still, the hate crime has taught them a valuable lesson. It's not about their front door. It's the love inside that counts.
You can fight back with love.
Heidi Hemmett, Fox 31 Denver.
That's a good comeback, and we all need to think of good comebacks. I remember when I was in college, there was I had a rather effeminate classmate, and he would get yelled at on the street all the time just for walking down the street. And they would yell faggot at him, and he would watch right up to him and says, "I'm not a faggot, I'm a queer." And it just sort of like, you're taking the word and all that kind of stuff. What can you do? We shouldn't have to deal with this. I just talked to the head of the NAACP today, Rosalind Brock, and she marched through Missouri in the protest over Ferguson. And she said on that march, they yelled the N-word at us a lot, held up watermelon, things like that. So people don't seem to get tired of their bigotry.
I saw a really shocking documentary over the holidays called Banished that ran on TV. It was actually made a few years ago about counties in the United States that made themselves all white by throwing out all the black people 100 years ago, but they're still all white. And they interviewed a lot of people who moved to these counties because they're all white. It was extremely discouraging to see this. Banished, if you get a chance to see that.
Right.
It's very illuminating.
Right.
Sad story out of Providence, Rhode Island, a little horrifying. A lesbian there shot and killed her girlfriend. They had a roommate living with them who said that they'd been arguing for 2 weeks. Just domestic violence is an issue among same-sex couples as it is with opposite-sex couples.
And then there is a story, and I'm going to tell you folks, we didn't talk about this last week because we don't talk about every suicide of a gay teen in the country or transgender teen in this case, but this has gotten so much attention worldwide that we have to. It's of Leila Alcorn, a 17-year-old transgender girl, Kings Mills near Cincinnati, committed suicide on December 28th by walking into traffic.
She walked in front of a truck, which was
Yeah.
not great for the truck driver.
No, and left a harrowing note about feeling that there is no way out, felt hopeless. Parents sent her to a Christian therapist, wouldn't allow her to transition. You know, Dan Savage says, he was the gay columnist, he wants the parents prosecuted and the therapist prosecuted for this. The parents had yanked her out of school when she came out, and she actually got some support from within her school from other students.
And I would just say that suicide is a very complicated act, and I'm hesitant to start putting it entirely into a political context.
Right.
I think there's more to it. But this story and her note and her saying, fix society, make my death mean something, has certainly gone viral and promoted some movement to try to pass legislation. But I think the most important thing we can do right now is give you information about crisis hotlines that people should avail themselves of if they are feeling in a struggle about any of these issues. There's the Trans Lifeline at 877-565-8860, which can also be accessed as translifeline.org.
And that's run by the Transgender Human Rights Institute.
There's the Chiron. So Trans Lifeline, you can Google that if you don't have time to write all this down. And then, of course, there's the Trevor Project, which has been in business for a long time, which deals with thousands of calls every year. They're at 866-488-7386, and they can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
And that's been around for a while. These are 24-hour lines, so people can call at any hour of the day. And you know,
the Trans Lifeline is not 24 hours, but if you look it up on their website, translifeline.org, you can get the hours when it's in operation.
And people are holding vigils around the world, including January 10th at 5:30 at Columbus Circle in New York. Of course, then you have the statement from the mother. We loved Josh, insisting on referring to her by her male birth name unconditionally, but we don't support that religiously. And people have got to get their religions out of the way of loving their children. And
we have to more aggressively provide resources for kids who don't feel comfortable in their own homes. You know, we used to, when we were going out into schools and doing education and trying to explain to people how it felt to grow up and come to a realization of your sexual orientation or your gender identity as being different from the so-called majority, we had a very simple little formula that said, say you're African American and you go to school and you get called names by the white kids or whatever. You go home and you say, Mommy, they called me names, and Mommy says, oh, that's terrible, and we love you, and you're a beautiful human being.
And it happened to me too, they would say, because they usually share your identity.
Exactly. But a young LGBT kid goes to school, gets called names, goes home, says, Mommy, they called me these names, and Mommy is certainly, possibly going to say, well, that's what you are, isn't it?
Although more and more parents are supporting their kids in those situations against the bullying that they're experiencing.
Absolutely, and that's one of the magnificent things of what's happened in the last 20, 30 years. And more kids are more willing to talk about it than they were 20, 30 years ago.
But some of them end up just fleeing because that's I mean, look, some people like Leela, yes, they commit suicide for a variety of reasons, but most flee. Or some grin and bear it, but I mean, if they flee, but they end up in the streets of the big cities.
Exactly.
I work with New Alternatives for homeless LGBT youth, and there's just tons of kids, especially transgender kids, on the streets. But that is preferable to their homes.
Yes, but it's why we talk about those kids as being overrepresented in the homeless population.
Now they haven't. Look, they're increasing funding for homeless youth, but it's not nearly enough for what the need is.
Yeah. Well, here's a heartwarming holiday story along these lines, which will give you the opposite anecdote. A fourth grade boy wrote a letter to Santa about asking for equality for all, especially his transgender sister, Molly, 20 years old. He asked for no shootings, no hate, no racism, and peace and love for everybody on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. He read this to his 4th grade class. The teacher dissolved in tears. Everybody was so moved by it. His mother is so proud of him, and it was really a great sounding story.
Because remember, we had a story last year about a grade school kid who wrote an essay like that, and they edited him and they shut him down. Remember out in Queens?
Yeah.
So the times are changing.
Yes.
Times are changing in Atlanta. The anti-gay fire chief there, Kevin Cochran, was fired by Mayor Kasim Reed. Cochran had written a book about comparing homosexuality to bestiality. Cochran had been given an option of resigning. He refused. His book, the mayor said, was in violation of city standards of conduct, and it subjected the city to liability for a hostile work environment.
The fire chief had been suspended for 30 days. He came back. The mayor was still upset about this and told him he had to resign, and he refused, and he was fired. He also made some anti-Semitic comments in the book, some misogynist comments in the book, and he, of course, and his supporters, Ralph Reed and everybody, are bombarding the mayor with these things about how dare you violate his free speech rights and his religious freedom rights, and the mayor is having none of it. He's saying, don't be ridiculous. This is inappropriate for a public official. Everybody who works for the department and is served by the department must feel equally honored and valuable, and I cannot have someone who's a public servant running this department acting like this.
Lots of people, express fealty to the Bible as the Word of God, and if you open it up, it says that gay people should be put to death in Leviticus. So what do we say about people who adhere to the Bible?
Well, I think where you cross the line is when you speak out in a way that makes people feel threatened and uncomfortable.
Well, I've always tried to...
He was accused of handing out this book, proselytizing, in essence, to members of the fire department.
I don't think people should be parts of anti-gay religions until they renounce, unless you're working to change it within, to change the church or the synagogue or the mosque, to make it more inclusive.
The firefighters union was very happy with the mayor and said this was the right thing to do.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. All right, a couple of losses in New York to note, or passings at least. One was Bess Meyerson. Now, she was the first Jewish Miss America. There she is dancing with Ed Koch, the former mayor, and we'll tell you why. She suffered from anti-Jewish discrimination. In 1945, she was Miss America, and she became a sort of a television personality. And then she became someone in public life, Commissioner of Consumer Affairs, Commissioner of Cultural Affairs, those kinds of things. But to her shame, in 1977, Ed Koch, a bachelor from Greenwich Village, who was a closeted gay man, needed somebody to be dancing with, to be seen with, and Bess Meyerson gave herself to this task to be what we would call his beard, and it was disgraceful.
Out of her own ambition, I guess.
Yeah.
One wonders why she would do that.
And then the other big death that you've all probably heard about is the former governor of New York, Mario Cuomo. There's a picture in the 1982 campaign when he became governor. You might recognize the guy on the right as me, but on the left there's Alan Roscoff, Betty Santoro, there's Bella Abzug there in the middle, because she was endorsing him that day, and my friend Hermano Stingo. But we're all smiling at that meeting. It was very hard to get. We couldn't get a meeting. This was in August before the primary. We couldn't get it because Andrew Cuomo, who was the campaign manager, was so anti-gay at the time. He, of course, is the guy who got us same-sex marriage. But what did Mario get us? He was governor from 1983 till 1994. We didn't get a gay rights bill in New York. We didn't even get hate crimes legislation in New York, and the AIDS crisis proliferated. Now, he did found what's called the AIDS Institute in New York, and let a lot of people do a lot of good work. He also had Ginny Apuzzo, who was the former director of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, as his top person on gay stuff, but also made her a commissioner and all those things. So there was some good stuff that happened.
Yeah, well.
Larry Kramer said that if he and everyone else focused on AIDS the way they did on Ebola, it would not have gotten out of hand.
Yeah. Some uncomfortable corporate stuff. It turns out that Saks Fifth Avenue department store, which has a 90% equality index rating from the Human Rights Campaign, is fighting a former employee's lawsuit for discrimination on the basis of gender identity. This was a transgender woman who was working in their Houston store at the Houston Galleria, was treated horribly, was abused and brutalized, was ridiculed, called names, everything. Filed a complaint. The store refused to negotiate any of it. She finally quit and filed a lawsuit. And Saks Fifth Avenue, which has a non-discrimination policy explicitly in its rules, is refusing to deal with this, is fighting the complaint, says she has no right to any equality because Houston didn't at the time have a non-discrimination ordinance, and completely ignores the fact of the Macy decision at the EEOC, and in fact cites other decisions that claim she has no rights.
Well, you know, I'm a former city human rights commissioner, and you raise an interesting question. When a company adopts a non-discrimination policy and the jurisdiction doesn't have one, how does that hold up in court?
Well, however it holds up in court, Saks, which purports to care about these issues and its employees, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, is fighting this woman all the way.
Why aren't we outside in the cold picketing Saks Fifth Avenue in New York instead of sitting in this cold studio?
This has just become apparent. And there's a similar case with J.P. Morgan Chase in AIDS News, which we will get to, which has a 100% rating from HRC. But let's do international news first.
Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, Vietnam is lifting the ban on same-sex marriage. That sounds pretty good, right?
Yep.
But they won't recognize them legally. They just won't ban you doing them. The new law also lets women marry at 18 and men at 20. How's that? Because they hadn't codified these things. But they have, obviously, an unequal sense about those things.
You may wonder what's been happening in Russia lately with all their anti-gay stuff. Well, in a southern Russian town of Tolyatti, a bunch of thugs attacked a gay club, seriously injured 4 patrons.
One of them critically.
Yeah.
The bar was called Phantom.
In Egypt,
all right.
The trial of the 26 men arrested in a bathhouse a couple of weeks ago has opened. Everybody believes this is the government trying to divert attention from the real problems in the country.
Surprise, surprise. The verdict is expected in that case on January the 12th.
Yep.
In
Luxembourg,
the same-sex marriages got underway on New Year's Day. The Prime Minister there, Xavier Bettel, is an openly gay person.
They had a registered partnership system, and now they have legal marriage.
Okay.
And speaking of marriage, British actor Stephen Fry, actor?
He's an actor. He's an actor. He played Oscar Wilde in the movies,
Right.
but he's mainly known for his Twitter feed these days.
Well, there he is on the left, and he's announced his engagement to Elliot Spencer on the right.
Who was a comedian.
Yeah. In the long-delayed marriage of the 2 gay men in Mexicali, Mexico is supposed to take place this Saturday. We'll see whether that actually happens.
In India, the first out transgender mayor has been elected, Madhu Kinar. We have a picture there. Yes, there she is. The town is Ralgar in central India. She beat a candidate from Prime Minister Modi's ruling party.
And the other major opposition party.
She's a member of the Dalit caste, which used to be called the Untouchables. They still have that kind of thing going over there. But she overcame an awful lot.
Well, her election is considered a real protest against the ruling parties. But
they just took power.
And in Peru, a transgender woman, Luisa Urcia, who was elected last year, has now taken her seat on a local council there.
Uganda, and this is big news, now has a gay magazine called Bombastic. They printed 30,000 copies. It's very bold to do it in such an anti-gay place.
And in the Dominican Republic, which is very anti-gay, the British Embassy is making itself available to conduct same-sex marriages now that same-sex marriage is legal in Britain. So a British man and a Dominican man who are partners got married at the British Embassy, and they said they'll continue to do that.
In Manchester, a pub called Wetherspoons. Manchester's a fairly gay-friendly city. I've not been, but they have a gay district. But this is a regular pub, or a non-gay specific pub. They barred a gay couple, saying only mixed couples tonight. Well, when they protested, the management actually said, oh, you know, the bouncer's wrong, and let them in and apologized. But they said the policy was originally to bar single males that would unbalance the clientele inside.
Well, so that's a lot of, you know, how they have ladies' nights where they let women in for less money, so they'll get more women in the club. AIDS news. Well, I promised you this J.P. Morgan Chase story. The Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund is suing J.P. Morgan Chase for discrimination against an HIV-positive employee, Jesus Leon. His doctor told him that he needed to amend his working schedule because of his disability of having HIV. And the company refused to negotiate schedule changes at all. Again, a company with 100% HRC rating. We have just a couple of minutes left.
Okay. I wanted to read the FDA statement on gay blood. Why they gay blood donation, why they're still leaving it to a year of unsafe activity, or just, you know, sex. Really, it's not unsafe activity. The statement is the assessment of high-risk sexual behaviors would be highly burdensome on blood donation establishments and potentially offensive to donors. In other words, they don't want to talk about it. You're asking about sex, but you don't want to talk about sex. It makes you uncomfortable. It's ridiculous.
Some of us feel the current policy is offensive.
Yes. Well.
Yes. A new study out of UC San Diego that people who have lived with HIV and have a low viral load are suppressing it themselves, no drugs. It turns out they have a much higher hospitalization rate for heart disease and psychiatric issues. And this is thought to be inflamed proteins. So if you are a long-term survivor but not on drugs, you might want to get a checkup on your cardiovascular status and see whether, in fact, there might be a reason for you to take drugs. Not that I want to be, you know, promoting the pharmaceutical industry, but it's an interesting question. And another study has found that those who start treatment early do have a much better outcome. Also, the National LGBT Cancer Network is starting a campaign to raise awareness of anal cancer and create a directory of places where you can get free or low-cost LGBT-friendly screening facilities.
That would be nice to know.
That's the National LGBT Cancer Network. You can look them up. Welcome to 2015. We will see you next week.
Thanks for watching, and if you want to be on our email list for weekly program previews, write to me, Andy Humm, at AOL.com.
Goodbye.